All right, good afternoon. I'm going to officially call the Oklahoma County Criminal Justice Authority meeting to order. This day, August 5th, we have one more member that's coming through the door, so we'll wait just a moment. I want to thank you all for coming here today for our facilitated meeting. And I will introduce you just a moment. We have one more trustee to come in.
Absolutely. And we'll have a full house.
We'll have a full house. Very good group. As a reminder, during our facilitated meeting, we had made the decision earlier to not do public comment or to have public comment as part of our facilitated meeting. So we thank you for your interest and for your ability to be here, and appreciate all that you all do. Also want to recognize and welcome, I was going to wait for one more, but our OCU Dean and former County Commissioner Jim Roth, thank you for being our host.
Yeah, thank you so much. Right? Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you all for your service on this important subject. Let me see you, Simone. When Tricia asked about us hosting, it was an immediate yes, because we want to be available to the community on all these issues, particularly the tough ones like this. I well remember my time in Oklahoma County with this problem ever present and feeling unsolvable. When you have city police arresting people and putting them in the county jail, waiting on a state process, there's a lot of risk the baton gets dropped. So I'm appreciative that you're bringing people together to help at least Oklahoma County and the jail and those issues be addressed. So welcome. If you need anything while you're here, please let us know. If you need anything beyond today, please let us know. We're happy to be a partner.
Well, thank you very much. The minutes of our last meeting have been provided to us. Call for a motion to approve. Any comments, questions, or changes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, same sign. Next item, we'll go ahead and get started. Jennifer Eve, thank you very much for coming. We discussed a little bit that you and Bob Spinks have been working to help with our facilitated meetings, and this being the first of what there probably will be more, but having the opportunity to actually sit down and be able to work together and sit at a table where we can literally reach across the table and kind of figure out our plan of action and where we're going and how. We've been discussing a lot of how we got here. And we appreciate you being our facilitator today and perhaps ongoing to make sure to help us get wherever it is that we decide as a group to go. So no further ado, Jennifer?
Well, thank you. It's an absolute delight to be here among you. I look around the table, we've shared a lot of times already, and I have worked with most of you for decades as we have watched our community grow from a scrappy teenager into an impressive young adult, right? Oklahoma City has just marched on forward. And it is my pleasure to be in your company as we work through this difficult, challenging situation. And we can do it. And I think if anybody can do it, the people in this room can make that happen. And so I appreciate everybody's willingness to be open and to be communicative, and there are no bad ideas. We're all just going to work through this together and figure out the best move forward for you all. We should work for the Oklahoma County Detention Center. So with that, what I wanted to talk about, we have an agenda for you all. You can see that. This is kind of our roadmap, for example, what we're hoping to accomplish. So the goal is to operate the Oklahoma County Detention Center in a safe, secure, humane, and cost-effective manner in all of those. And so keep that in your mind as we start to work through all this. And let me know whenever you all need a break, because we're certainly happy to take 5 minutes if that works. Sure. All right, so do we have a common understanding of what we want to accomplish today? Let's start with that and open to discussion.
Well, I'll start by saying that My ideas of what we're going to accomplish today is to start trying to figure out a roadmap to get us from where we are now to the point that we feel comfortable making some of these decisions that are there. And we actually feel comfortable with the assumption of our role as a trust over the contingency.
And so the trust has been in operation for what, 2 months? Is that correct? About 2 months? So do you all have a good sense of what you feel your goal is, your end goal is as a trust?
Can I speak of what I really want to do is discuss and to some degree decide on a method of operation. I think that should be, I guess, the first one up there to hire a manager or superintendent or whatever title we use over the jail, and then with it, and actually have that happen as quickly as possible. And then after we do that, to see if we can get some money from the county to authorize our chair again to request a sum of money in order to hire a jail administrator. So that's what I'd like to do. The other thing that I think I want to do in that process is assure current jail employees that when that happens on whatever day it is, the next day staff needs to be there. And that I hope and I think probably we all want to provide that assurance. And there's assurance already to be provided that staff salaries and staff benefits, staff retirement, staff insurance will be protected. There's no intent on my part to change that. The only thing that I want to do is get an administrator who shares some of the vision that we share.
Let's talk a little bit about the vision, because I gave a sentence about what we think is a safe, humane manner to operate the jail. But let's talk about your vision individually, because I know that I want to make sure we have some consensus as to the vision. I'm sorry, we're not taking public comments.
Well, my vision, and it's somewhat limited, but I've been to multiple prisons in the state, really multiple jails in the state, and knowing that we can't transplant one from there to here, I think the model that they utilize at the Tulsa County Jail, for example, is one that we can use for a model, not to be necessarily exactly the same, but to use that as kind of a roadmap. But the first thing we have to do is get an administrator here, who's our administrator.
Other comments?
That's right. You know, the jail has had some problems over the years for a number of reasons. One is that it was overpopulated. So there was 2,600 people in there, mostly triple booked for a while, and really troublesome because of the efforts of a lot of folks, courts, police, DAs, public defenders. We've been able to change some processes and get that down to roughly 1,600 at this point in time. That's great progress, and I think we should, one, is acknowledge that has happened, and we are in better position to go forward with solutions with a jail that holds 1,600 than one that holds 2,600. But I also think that 1,600 isn't the number that we should have in mind. I think we need to look at a lot of other things that are out there. I know MAPS 4 is going forward. There's a possibility of a mental health facility, a diversion facility that could possibly come out of it. Maybe we need to get some people in substance abuse, maybe look at other things and get that number down even further. Those are things beyond the sheriff's ability to do things, but if we can get some other things and get that number lower, it makes the ultimate solution look different than it is in 16, and clearly different than it was just this undoable thing at 2,600. The other thing we need to acknowledge is that the facility has some restraints. The cells, the pods aren't really that different than Tulsa cell pods outside. There's an outside area. But they do have some real restrictions here because of the multi-story challenges that they have for moving prisoners up and down, moving food and moving prisoners to in and out to medical and to recreation. That really makes it challenging. But a pod is still a pod out there. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know where we're going with it. And so, again, I don't know how to get the population down to 1,600, but I think we need to focus on that. I think we need to address it. Once we come up to what that ultimate number of inmates is, we need to take a look at the facilities that would best accommodate that. Maybe it's a minimum security facility someplace, maybe it needs to be raised. I don't know the answer to that at this point in time. And then the other issue is financial. And we need to really understand what money is available, and I'm not making I don't think there's any issues with how the money is being spent. I don't think there's any problem with that, but I don't know if he's got enough money or too much money. I'm thinking not too much as we go forward. And what is a reasonable funding level as we go forward? And of course that depends partly on the number of people in there and also the facility you're operating as we go in the future. But Senator, you said something earlier that I really want to emphasize what you said, and that's, I know there's been some angst by the employees over there that they don't know what's happening. And in here we say, we can contract out operations, we got a sheriff on the operations, or we could have a hire our own administrator. 3 different options that are out there. Any of those 3 options, we will need DOs to go forward. And it would be my intention as we go forward that we do anything in our power to maintain those DOs and that they would be employed under any of the 3 options as we go forward, because I think it's important. In the past, when I was with the city, I've been involved in some where we contracted out some operations. We contracted out the Civic Center, we contracted out the Cox Center and the Ford Center, we contracted out areas of solid waste collection, we contracted out areas of water and wastewater treatment over the years. And we made sure that those employees were taken care of. And they were either given a job or a place to transfer elsewhere or some type of situation. Because one part of that is as humane, but we need to be humane to our guests. We also need to be humane to our employees.
Is it possible, do you think, in your mind, or as we think about it moving forward, and this is not today's decision, but as we begin to figure out what the budget is and how much money, you think it might be possible that theoretically there could be a funding stream identified that could be used for a bond issue, and we have bonding capacity to build something that way that might be more in line and more humane in its operation, just because of the configuration of the cells?
Well, I've always believed geo bond issues are a good way to go forward. Before we make that decision, I think we should do some political research and analysis and see what's passable. Sure. And I don't know if a geo, I've been told, I have seen that a sales tax is a little more popular option out there than a geo. Don't know that to be true. I've been told that. Somebody told me, I'm not sure who it is, that we are the only county in the state that doesn't have a sales tax.
That is a true statement.
Was it you that said that?
Well, I want to respond to that just for me. If I'm going to vote a penny tax for anything, it's going to be for mental health treatment, for substance abuse treatment, not for the, not to build a cage to put people in. I'm just not going to be for that.
I agree with that concept, Senator, but I'm not sure we can absolutely do that. I'm not sure we can do that with it. We got to look at a total comprehensive solution.
We got to look at it.
And I think it's early in the game. I admire the goal, but I think it's early in the game to make that statement.
But we do know from history that taxpayers kind of frowned on the last by a large margin.
You know, we were talking earlier about the number of people in the jail, and it's now down to 1,600. What would be the ideal number of people?
We don't know until we do an assessment of them. We really don't know what we have. There's a model they're using right now to assess that's validated, but I don't think it's successful. I think what it does is put minimum security people in a high security assessment or categorization. I don't believe that we have 70% and medium and maximum security people, but Tulsa County only has 100 out of their 1,600 who are maximum. So we'll need an assessment. First, I would like to go ahead and figure out all the operations, and as we go forward with that, and determine how we will manage the jails.
Agreed. In front of you, you have some place to write some notes, so feel free to. And we may use the flip chart if some ideas get generated. Did you have something to say?
Sure. Just a couple of random things. Number one, with regard to the employees, this issue came up when we were with the Board of County Commissioners, when we were deciding whether or not to vote to establish the jail trust. And I said at that time, and I'll say it again, first of all, as far as the employees are concerned, there are roughly three options for anyone who has the operation of jail: the sheriff, hiring a jail administrator, and the trust to appoint people or a private contractor. If any of those ways can be structured so as the employees have just as much security as they do now for their jobs. In fact, I would think that should be the model. You can do that either insisting on it as a contractual thing with a private contractor. I've already stated my public preference, and it's not to be the sheriff. I would personally prefer that we hire a jail administrator through the trust. If you do that, then state law mandates that all the employees retain their retirement benefits. That's state law. We couldn't do anything different if we wanted to, not certainly want to. And then there is ample precedent for employees of a trust, of which the county is a beneficiary, having employees that do qualify for health benefits the same as they would. And I have also said publicly on more than one occasion that I think we should do that. I think that if we hire a jail administrator, the trust is actually the employer, effectively, that I, for one, at the county level, and while I can't speak for my fellow commissioners, I feel fairly confident from other statements they've made that they would agree, correct me if I'm wrong, but that we would want the employees of a trust also to have the same health benefits. So nothing would change as far as that goes, as far as employment benefits. So there's just one that come up. I totally agree. We should make sure that it is that the employment security such as is no different than it is now for jail employees, and also the benefits. So that's what. And as far as the challenges of the jail, there are, I think Jim kind of alluded to this, there's really kind of three parts. There's the population, and there may be some things we as a trust could do with that, but mostly that's going to be the courts and things like that deal with policies. In some cases, it might even require changes in state law that assist. There are some things I think we could do as a trust to reduce the population, and I support that. I support criminal justice reform. The legislature now, and I think we should applaud those who have helped make that happen. And it does make the job of this trust much easier. And there is, I think, room to improve on that, although at some point we reach a floor level, probably a number of people in the jail. The other two issues would be the operations of the jail and the facility. The facility is kind of a long-term deal, because you're looking at, and I wouldn't assume that it would take extra revenue. That's, I think, something to be determined. There may be ways to do it within the existing revenue streams we have there. Maybe, depending on where you build it, you may be able to work with the city and do a tax financing district at the current jail site. If you build a different site, that would help provide some revenue for some. There's a variety of things you could do in addition to a tax increase, and all those things should be looked at in dealing with that. The more urgent thing, it seems to me, is what Ms. Arnell brought up, and that's the operations. And there are some things that could be done on that much more quickly without any new revenue that I would like to see perhaps we look at before we start going into the more long-term issue of new facilities, because that's a much more, just by its very nature, construction and all that takes a lot longer time than changing some operations.
Expediting bookings and releases would lower the jail population.
Sure, yes.
Tremendously.
Yes,
And you
that's
see
true.
how many are being booked today? If they were released within 4 hours, if they were booked within 2, released within 4, then we wouldn't have them for 48 hours. And that would be significantly lower the population.
There's several successful trusts within the jail trust within the state of Oklahoma. I would like to have this board have our legal attorney, if you haven't already done that, I would request that we get information from those successful trusts that's already doing it and has a roadmap. I think it would be very helpful to this board to see what's been done in the past and what works and what doesn't work. And I think it would expedite our goal here. And if that's already been done, I apologize, but we have successful trust that's been operating and works. We ought to.
Sheriff, how many are there in the state, you know?
I'm aware of 4 or 5 within the state of Oklahoma, and I like to stay within the state of Oklahoma and not go out of state that has different laws and various other things. But just a statement for me that there's been some confusion, I think, on where I stood on this. I'd like to clear that up. From day one, I have not been opposed to a jail trust. My position was that to have a jail trust, you need to identify permanent funding in the beginning. And we have not done that, but I just don't want to see us trying to reinvent the wheel here, and that's what I've seen over the last few weeks. My goals are becoming a little more confused after attending 7 or 8 of these meetings. I think we need to keep moving forward, not going backward. But a successful jail trust identifies permanent funding to operate it. And the successful jail trust in Oklahoma, they win a financial trust. They will allow the sheriff to operate the jail. Those are the successful ones. There's some that hasn't been successful. Tulsa, we always compare ourselves to Tulsa. Tulsa has a sales tax, a countywide sales tax. We do not. But they did the trust. They went a different direction. It didn't work out. They came back and now they're letting the sheriff operate the jail. That's my position. Identify permanent funding, do a financial trust, and let the sheriff operate the jail.
Others?
I agree with much of what has been said on a general basis. I just want to make a few specific comments. In addition to all those goals we identified, safety, security, humanity, we've got to consider constitutionality and whether our jail is upholding the Constitution. We need to do research, but not confine ourselves to Oklahoma. And with all due respect to Oklahoma and all of our systems, we're not doing the best when it comes to mass incarceration. So I think we have to look outside of Oklahoma and look at nationwide models that are successful and other jails around the country that are successful in the way they're operating jails and treating their people within those facilities. We can find best practices not just in Oklahoma, but other places. We do often look at Tulsa too much, in my opinion. I think Tulsa has a lot of great things going on. I was impressed with the visit there, but I think we actually could do better. I don't think we just reach for Tulsa and then stop. I think we push beyond that. We do need to keep the population down. I agree with city manager. Yes, I think a new facility eventually needs to be built because the current one just will never be what it needs to be for humans to be in there. But until then, quick fixes are necessary, and whatever we need to do to support the sheriff in doing that, I'm on board with that. I'm all for everything Commissioner Calvi mentioned about the employees and keeping them and securing their benefits. And then if it comes down to it and there is no current revenue or source of funding that's going to help us with the new facility, that's one level that will be more conducive for everyone involved, employees, inmates, emergency service providers who are going to be visiting this facility. If we don't have the money that exists, then I think we do propose whatever will politically pan out to achieve those goals, sales tax or not.
Let's start talking about the different options. And let's talk, first of all, about a jail administrator. So I want to hear collectively from the group. And those of you who have not chimed in, I'll be calling on you, okay? But I want you all to be telling me the positives and the negatives of a jail administrator. What are your thoughts?
Jennifer, I think we might need to clarify, and perhaps our council can help with this. There's a couple options. I just want to make sure that we all have the same language. There would be a jail administrator that the trust, I understand, would be the trust employee that perhaps would be working with the sheriff's office at the detention center. Or the trust could also, from my understanding, have a manager that oversees, I'm not sure if there's a distinction, but we want to make sure, like a jail administrator, or is the discussion also that the trust would have kind of a manager? So am I confusing it more, or?
Well, the trust can engage a manager. The manager means administrator or superintendent, but probably administrator is the best term. Now, you also said something about the sheriff. It could be that the trust would engage the sheriff to operate the jail, and the jail and the sheriff would then, but the administrator would work for the sheriff. So that's an option.
He currently has an administrator.
Right, but my thought would be that if we went that route and the sheriff hired an administrator, that is all he would be the jail administrator. He wouldn't be the undersheriff. He wouldn't really be a sheriff at all. He would be whatever we would call the supervisor or the administrator over that facility.
Sheriff Taylor, just so I understand, is the undersheriff considered the jail administrator now?
He is now, he is the jail administrator, and I have two assistants.
And we've met them. I just wanted to clarify that we have the two captains that are serving under the undersheriff.
Yes. Going back to one of your questions, one of the negatives on hiring a jail administrator, and I've looked at that, we advertised, and to find a good, competent jail administrator with experience in a facility our size, they were wanting a salary of $25,000 to $40,000 more than the elected official made. So that's just a negative when you look at hiring somebody with experience in a large jail facility. In a lot of other areas of the United States, the pay is considerably higher than what we have here.
That wouldn't be a requirement if the jail administrator worked directly for the trust. It would not be a salary cap, other than.
No, but the trust would have to figure out where you're going to get the money to pay that.
Yeah.
I never had that option as a sheriff. I was limited. I had to stay within what they gave me. And make it work.
Well,
And
let me
then
just
do
say
other
this,
jobs too.
let me say this to start with. After looking at everything, and we still have a request out there for funding to do an audit over the operations of the detention center. But I am of the opinion, based on what limited information I've seen right now, that the jail is underfunded. And that whatever option we engage will probably require.
So that
In order
financial,
to effectively operate that facility.
so where are we at with regard to that financial review in terms of timeline? Does anyone know?
It has to appear before a Board of County Commissioners meeting, at which point, obviously we have a commitment, so I would expect to be, that would occur, I would hope next week. I'm going to back up, it's the county budget board. So for my fellow budget board members here, let me correct myself on that. Our next meeting is August 15th, I think. So that I would intend to put it on the agenda for that meeting, and then the budget board will decide whether to proceed with that. That's the money for legal services and audit.
Madam Chair, if the Chair would entertain a motion to kind of get us in.
Wait, one moment, Senator. I would, just as a matter of clarification, out of my ignorance to it, is a jail administrator capping at the elected officials. Is there statutory that you couldn't, can someone that works for you have a salary larger than you? That may not be.
It's a funny one.
The funding was available. Is there a cap? Like in some, I know they can't make more than the elected officials.
That's my understanding. I couldn't understand or would nominate as an elected official.
I just wondered.
If I'm wrong, please correct me.
No, I just clarified that.
Well, a couple of motions, really, and I don't know. The first motion would be to authorize the chair to approach the county budget board and request some amount, I don't know if that's a couple $100,000, or some amount with which we could use to hire an administrator, but that budget thing would need to be taken care of. Or maybe, I think we do need to make that request. And we need someone to help sort through and work with the budget board, and I guess the county treasurer to see. I mean, I know there's a lump sum of $30 million that's going to the jail now, but I don't have a clue how that gets spent or what, I don't, and I'm not a CPA or an accountant, so I'd have a hard time figuring that out. We need someone to help us out. But the motion would be to authorize you to make that request to the county budget board.
Senator Brown, is that a question for having an administrator that helps do this process, like works with the financial review and identifies how much
Yeah, and that would,
money and stuff, that it's not,
in my mind, we'd get to that in the next motion I'd like to offer, which would be to actually start the process or to bring back to our next meeting a statement that authorizes that process to begin and maybe appoint, we don't need committees, but we need someone to be able to sit down and work on that. But yeah, two motions, one to ask for the money, one to ask for the ability to hire that person.
If I can just throw a thought in here, I think that we can get there, but I don't feel like we have worked through the different options yet. And I do think it's important for us to look at the positives and negatives of each so that you guys collectively can reach a consensus. Does that work for you all?
You're driving this train, I'm not.
I'm not driving anything, I'm just sitting here listening. It's been a good conversation so far. So so we've talked through some of the positives and negatives of a jail administrator role. Anything else that we want to bring to the table before we move to option 2?
First of all, there are, correct me if I'm wrong, about 15 counties in the state that have a trust, of which 6, the trust itself actually runs its jail. The sheriff has nothing to do with running the jail. So it is, there is precedent for doing that. And then I would also ask that, as far as making up one's mind about whether more funding is needed, I think we have an audit coming up, and I think that would be a good thing
It's a
to.
financial review.
Thank you. Financial review, I'll correct the classification of it. So look at that before one would make a decision on whether the jail has enough funding or not. Because I think that could tell us more, having somebody go through the links, et cetera. I would ask that we get information, perhaps a list of all the people that work for the sheriff's office, which we can get from our county clerk's office, and just get what do these guys do? Do they work in the jail? Are they working jail part of the time? We've been asking, but we haven't been able to get them from the sheriff's office. It would be very helpful to know where all these people that the county is paying now work in the sheriff's office, where they're working. And, if they're working part-time in jail, part-time somewhere else, to let us know roughly what percentage, et cetera, so we can get a handle on what is going on. That would be helpful in terms of determining anything with the financials. As far as a jail administrator, I think Ms. Arnall alluded to what the county is. The sheriff is correct. The county is precluded from paying people more than the salary of the elected official. The trust is under no such restriction, nor is the trust restricted to a one-year contract like the county is. So there are certain advantages to having this is true of all public trusts in terms of being able to get maybe economies of scale and things like that for operations. And then I would also point out the advantage of having a jail administrator is that you don't have, in that model, you would have, and the same if you had a private contractor for a jail administrator between them. But with the jail administrator, their sole purpose is to run the jail. The sheriff has many duties required by law. He has to serve civil process papers, he has to provide police services in the unincorporated parts of the county, he has to guard the courthouse. He does many things outside the jail. And so it's not a rifle shot focus on running the jail. So to me, having a jail administrator who would get an allocation from the county budget member for X just to run the jail, there would be no kind of mixing and matching and all that. And to me, that would be a huge advantage of having a jail administrator. You would no longer have any kind of back and forth on that. So it's really getting control of the funding for the jail and making sure that it goes solely to the jail. And that's something that no sheriff's office can do. It's not limited to a county. So to me, that's a huge advantage of having a jail administrator.
Another benefit to a jail administrator, if you were to find the right person, would be someone who was a professional in that area. Law enforcement and detention are two different professional areas. And we can have a nationwide search. We could hire someone who knows best practices in jail enforcement and detention.
So I've heard from the two of you that let's look beyond the state of Oklahoma for best practices. Is that something that the trust collectively agrees with?
I don't have a problem looking beyond the borders of the state of Oklahoma, but if we've got 15 jail trusts in the state of Oklahoma, we need some information on them maybe to see what they're doing, how are they running their facilities, what are their issues? Because I was not aware that there were that many jails operated by trusts in the state of Oklahoma.
To be clear, there's 6 where the trust actually operates. There are some additional ones where they have a trust with a contract with their sheriff or some other arrangement.
Okay, but I think they're still really looking at to see what's going on with them, what the issues are, what's the pros and cons. But I certainly don't have a problem going out of state and looking at other models. I think we should be as broad as we can in trying to determine, what would be best for us here.
Okay, so let's move to the option of a private contractor. Let's talk about the pros and cons of that option.
Well, the first con to me with a private contractor is how do you control your cost in terms of having a renegotiated contract.
Okay. Would most of the contracts be a yearly contract?
I don't know. I understand that we have the ability to do more than a year. I guess it would depend on whether or not the contractor would want to do one that was more than a year.
Well, if they do whatever criteria we set out,
Good.
How many of these type of private companies are there out there? And are there a few that you all are aware of that seem to be like the gold standard for this type of work?
I don't think there's a gold standard. All of these, or all that I know of, for-profit companies who have a vested interest in keeping the prisons full and the jails full. And just on that basis, I would much prefer that the jail trust be the authority and be responsible.
So are they paid by person per bed? Like how many bed nights? I don't know.
I think you can set it up a lot of different ways. You can give a management fee and have some incentives built in. I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. And I'm not necessarily carrying water for a private contractor. I think probably any of the three options can be successful. It's how we execute. It's how we put it together. It's how we manage it. It's how we set those things up.
And you've had experience with private contractors in the city, haven't you?
Yes.
With hiring private companies?
And there's a lot of different models out there. There's a lot of different ways to set it up.
Okay, others?
The RFP process can be really problematic from our perspective. I've probably read 200, 300 RFPs in the security, correction, custodial space this calendar year. And often in the RFP process, most RFPs are honest, and they say, oh, award will go to the lowest bidder. Other contracts, RFPs, are not as honest, and they offer a facade of a matrix of 5 categories: experience, like experience, cost, customer service, number of references. It all comes down to cost, almost every time. So my concern with the administrator and contracting now is that because we're doing public money, we would, whether we win or not, we would be settling on the lowest bidder. The lowest bidder. And as Commissioner said and Mr. Tabb said, well, they both referred to it, we could write another one. It was 1 year or 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, and a 1 year extension. I read these all the time. All the time. So we can get somebody locked in for a price or a cost, but then that price and cost goes up. And then you're locked into a private company, a private administrator, who now has experience with your specific jail. And when it's up for renewal, you're not over a barrel, but you really are hard pressed to go to a different administrator because all the experience they have with your population, in this case, working with your trust, in this case, you brought them up to speed.
And then you lose all that
educated them.
institutional memory.
But the greatest concern I have, and I'm really, to quote my good friend Mike Turpin, I'm the hitchhiker in a bad town. I can read the direction right now. I can pass a polygraph exam saying I'm for the administrator or I'm for the sheriff running the jail. I can't answer that. But I can identify serious problems with the administrator. And the greatest one I see is that you can't, you all can't, I can't, the population of Oklahoma County can't vote out the administrator. You can't do it. And if the administrator's hired, I'll go out on a limb and say 95 to 99% of Oklahoma County won't have a clue that man or woman's name, or that company, or where they're from, even if they're from across the street. So the accountability of knowing who your sheriff is and the public servant of the sheriff I mean, Oklahoma County's proven one thing: they will outcry and voice an opposition to a sheriff they don't like, and remove a sheriff they don't like. There's a record of that. So it sounds like I'm advocating for, and this is objective. It's not sheriff with a last name after it. You have to look at this objectively. The elected sheriff of the county, not P.D. Taylor as the sheriff. He might be here another 20 years, another 20 days. If I was P.D. Taylor, I'd be here another 20 seconds and I'd be out. But he's a public servant. So there are challenges with administration, and there are others, but as you know, I don't talk a lot in these meetings. Abraham Lincoln said it's better to remain silent and let everybody think you're a fool than to open your mouth and move all doubt.
Were you talking to me?
No. Less said is better, so I don't like to talk a lot. I like to make my points and move on, but those are some problems with administration.
Others?
I would just like to clarify one thing, Madam Chairman. We were talking about, I have a jail administrator and 2 assistant jail administrators. Those 2 assistants have spent their entire adult life running a jail. That's all they do. They work in the jail, they run the jail. I didn't want any trust members to be confused that they're running the jail Monday and Tuesday and they're stopping people in traffic on Thursday and Friday. That's not the case. Their entire lives devoted to running the jail.
Clarification.
I've already stated my preferences between an administrator or a private jail operator, but there is, actually the trust is actually required to put an RFP. That's non-binding. We don't have to accept any bids from private contractors. And I think that's a useful thing. The best benefit, for whatever reasons, play devil's advocate from a private contractor is the economies of scale. The companies that operate nationwide, they do operate already in Oklahoma with the Department of Corrections system and operate jails in other places. And you can get some idea of a cost, maybe parameters perhaps, by which it's a reasonable cost per jail. For instance, there's a company that's operating a facility for the State Department of Corrections in Hawaii that for 2,600 inmates is spending $40 million a year. Proportionally, that's a whole lot less than we're spending. And so I think that there again, looking at funding issues and things like that, benchmarks I think is a useful thing, and that is one useful thing from private contractors. Quite frankly, even if you don't end up choosing that option, is that you have that process out there and you can get some idea for some of these things. I think you can, again, with all the concerns that have been raised, and I will voice my thoughts, and I appreciate those concerns. Thanks, and around from others, that I think they also have some best practices that we perhaps could look at, perhaps in facilities in other states or at the Department of Corrections. And just lastly, it's been a long time since the Board of Oklahoma County turned out a sheriff. 1994, I think, was the last time. So it's been a generation since that's occurred. So sometimes it's not as easy to take care of things with an elected office as it would be with somebody who is going to have to answer the budget board, because the budget board is going to be providing funding, and those are all elected officials. So there is a check and balance that the voters do have with regard to the jail administrator.
Well, let's talk about the pros and cons of having Sheriff Taylor continue to run the jail. That's our third option, so let's get that out.
Well, and this is not personal to Sheriff Taylor, but it is to the jail operation. There has been a considerable amount that's been paid out by the county. That I read some figures that said $20 million of judgments and settlements because of some administration, treatment, life and death kinds of issues. So that to me, speaks very loudly about a change in operations. I don't know the specifics of any of those, but I know we as taxpayers are paying for it. And so that's a huge issue. I've said to some people myself recently, and I've heard stories about people who would plead guilty to some crime so they could go into prison and get out of the county jail because of the inhumane conditions. And when we go there, that's not any place I would want to go or send anyone that I care about. So that's at least one of the reasons that I would want to do something different than that. We do hear stories, and I know people have been fired for mistreatment of the arrestees. But that's not something that, you know, I think whoever does that sets a tone in the jail of how you treat people. And 80% of the people in jail, if the figures we're given are correct, have not been convicted of anything. They're there, but they're not all, as the president would say, there are good people on both sides.
So you all collectively took a tour of the jail, is that correct? Have you all toured the jail?
Not collectively.
Oh, but you each been through it? Your
I
thoughts?
admittedly have not toured it as a trustee. I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah, the trustee.
I'd like to respond to Mr. Brown's statement. I'd like to clarify this once and for all. Through the rumor mill, someone's been spreading and telling people over the last couple of years that jail and counties paid out over $20 million in reference to the jail. Well, the truth of that is to get to the $20 million figure, you've got to go back 11 or 12 years. And about $16.5 million of that $20 million was paid out for unpaid medical bills by the county and my predecessor through lawsuits from OU Medical Center and various other things. So $16.5 million of that was lawsuits over unpaid medical bills that the county or the sheriff didn't pay. It wasn't me, I inherited that.
Sheriff, I didn't make that personal with you.
I wanted to clear that up for everyone because those statements have been spread around daily and they're not true.
I read it in the paper, so that's all I know.
I just told you the truth.
Oh, well, you know, I don't know, Sheriff. You haven't brought any figures. I would like to know how many people have died in that jail, how many people have died in the hospital after being taken from the jail, and how much has been paid out. We don't have those figures. But they're way bigger than I want them to be. I promise you that.
Okay, well, let's move on from there. I understand there's a difference of opinion there, and the facts we can't.
Tell me when I'm talking too much.
No, it's all good, and that's, I mean,
You're now talking too much. We might be getting a little into factual weeds that we wouldn't be able to
yeah.
verify or discuss now, which brings us back a little bit higher, but none of it's talking too much. This is your all's meeting, so more back to what we can acknowledge today we're discussing.
I don't think anybody can point a finger at the sheriff and say he doesn't care that he's not tried. But I've seen him cry when he heard about somebody who died. It's very important to him that humane treatment of individuals, both working there and in there. And I've seen it with his people. But I also know that we're here because we're not happy with jail administration, with the way the jail's run. And is it that we don't have enough money? The only way we'll know is when we do, and then the sheriff can say, I told you so. But probably would. Yeah. No, I mean, he absolutely could possibly have the right, but I don't think we'll ever know unless we do this. And I also don't think, I think he just wants the best for the job. I think he sure does.
I appreciate those comments. It's like my mother said, I think my interpreter told me, son, beware of what you ask for, you might just get it. That's kind of where we're at.
Okay, we've reached our quota of my turn.
Yeah, it's hard to wait too. So, all right, so is there anything else before we, I want to start building a consensus toward a move of which one of these three that we collectively, I know everybody's got different opinions, but collectively, we're here to make a change. We're here, I don't mean a change like, we're here to move forward. And so, anything else you all want to talk about before we start that conversation? Jim?
You know, I go back to what we talked about earlier about the criminal justice and taking, how we handle that and what we've done over the last few years. And I think the community finally got to a point that they demanded that. And so we've done some things. We haven't done it all. We've done some good things, but there's still a lot of work left to be done in that area. And then we talked about the financial operations. We really don't know whether we got enough money there or not. But then we talk about the facility itself and the challenges that has. But I really think there's probably another one, and that's the operations that are out there. And I think that I think our charge is to come in and evaluate and see if there are improvements that can be done to jail operations. Whether that's through any of the three, but we really do, I think, have a charge to go look at that. And whether it's, I don't know what the answers are. I mean, we can all go to other facilities and say, well, they're doing it that way, how come we're not doing it that way? And some things. And we can also go to the jails and say, gosh, they're doing it that way, I think we're doing it better how we're doing it here. I mean, having an open look at the facility is, I consider that to be a good thing. To go out and find out what the best practices are and to try something. And don't be afraid to try something. And sometimes we'll try something like that wasn't a very good idea, and have the responsibility, not the, or be courageous enough to stand up and say, okay, we tried that didn't work, so now we're going to go back and try something else. Not just maybe make a decision. Say, well, we got to stand by that because we made a decision. We got to be open. We got to look at what the best practices are, and we've got to do what we can with the constraints that we have to make this secure, safe, secure, humane, and cost-effective facility.
The question of if the problem were funding, first of all, the last time there was a public vote on whether to give more money to the sheriff's office, only like 15% of the public voted for it. And what I understand, there have been some polling done, not like real recently, but in the past several months, from what I understand, so prior to when I took office, that showed that it wasn't a whole lot different now, maybe a little better. So before we try resting on that as an avenue, recognize that that's a big challenge, especially.
It is a big challenge, but we don't have anything to put out there and say this is what we're voting for. We don't have anything to say we've made improvements, so you're going to get this for this.
Correct.
We don't have anything here.
Right.
If you just want to vote for a new jail.
Right. You're also looking at sales tax wise that I'm going to make an assumption that MAPS 4 passes. That we're already, higher than Texas in sales tax. Pushing that much higher would push us past New York and Los Angeles. There's some factors to be considered there. All I'm saying is that I'm not saying that inherently that should be ruled out. What I'm saying is that perhaps the more urgent thing would be to look at things that can be done without additional funding. And I think most, if not all, of us have seen the Tulsa County Jail. I don't disagree that we should look everywhere for good ideas, but that's one where there are the same laws. It's roughly the same population. It's also an urban county in Oklahoma. And some of the things that are done operationally different there. And one of the things, I alluded to it earlier, but having they had like we did, a sheriff who was forced out of office in disgrace. Okay, put it that way. Unlike us, they had a clean break with the past because they had somebody to run for that office who was elected, who had never worked for the sheriff's office. And he came in, the very first thing he did was he hired a civilian jail officer to run the jail. And just did that. We've not had that opportunity in Oklahoma County, not suggesting that you can go as far as sheriff's office, but the trust can do that. We hired a jail administrator directly. You would, I alluded to earlier, you would very clearly no longer have any cost shifting in between jail and non-jail functions. You've done that immediately. And that to me is the biggest thing one can do. The biggest problem with the sheriff's office now is there's a focus that is understandable. It should be more law enforcement. Sheriffs all across the state are required to be a law enforcement officer. Running a jail is more like running a hotel or something like that. Or it's not the same thing. To have a clear distinction between those two functions seems to me to be very helpful. I'll point out a couple of things. I think Mr. Couch asked a question a couple meetings ago. The question and was alluded to here earlier today. Overclassification of inmates in terms of their security risk. And then we look at also that we have overclassification here in Oklahoma County compared to Tulsa County. And also in Oklahoma County, many, if not most, of our jail detention officers are police certified law enforcement officers. They're not in Tulsa. We only have 2 police certified officers on duty at any time in Tulsa County jail. And that's just because they have to arrest somebody who's actually out of jail. And the difference is that their jail administrator has no incentive to go and fund more law enforcement stuff. Law enforcement is great. I work with Army CID every day in Baghdad. I have many police officers who are clients. That's a great thing. It is a totally different career path than being in jail. They're 2 separate things. And to separate them here seems to me to be absolutely critical. I think it would help with that overclassification problem. I think that you would have a different focus in how to operate the jail. And that's something we can do without any additional money. Now, are there other things that need to be done after that? Very possibly. And possibly those will require more money. And possibly that will require asking the taxpayers for more money. But let's do what we can now to go more toward the root of the problem in a way that doesn't require more money. And let's look at separating them out entirely and getting no incentive for whoever's operating jail to be putting money over in law enforcement functions. And I think if we do that, we would have many of the problems would be solved at that point. That will be a better solution even than bringing in more money. I'm not saying that both aren't, but I am saying that that would be the number one thing we could do. Let the sheriff be the law enforcement officer and focus on that. That's great. But let's have a totally separate function that is totally separately funded, not answerable to the sheriff to run the jail.
I agree with Commissioner Kelly. I didn't say I was artfully, well, I think we have a fabulous sheriff who is extremely ethical. I still think we could run this differently. I've been trying for 3 years to get bookings and releases more efficient. But the amount of time for each is unreasonable, and it creates a backlog, and it creates way too many people in the jail who shouldn't be. And I guess until we try it, we won't know what the holdups are.
And people get lost in the jail.
Commissioner, may I ask you if you're able to comment? You're talking about funding, you're talking about an administrator. How do you perceive that would be funded? As you're mentioning, you're trying to find solutions that don't require too much more funding to have to come to the table right now. Are you able to comment on what that would look like if we were to say we want an administrator separate of the sheriff and his duties? How is that going to look in the commissioners?
Sure, if I may.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the county, unlike the state or the city, when we fund another elected office in the county, so whether it's the commissioner's office or the county assessor or the county treasurer is here, county clerk, sheriff, we can only give them a lump sum. We cannot tell them how to spend it. And this has come up in the past. I'm told by members of the budget board, there was a situation a few years ago where the budget board gave the sheriff's office additional $800,000 for some combination of raising pay of detention officers and hiring more. And a year later, there's some additional question like, what did you do with $800,000? Did you hire additional people? No. Did you pay the current people more? No. What did you do with money? Couldn't answer. So we can't earmark money, in other words. So now the budget board did, in this last budget, allocated a certain amount to the sheriff for jail operations. Okay? That can be changed. And a certain amount for non-jail functions. But that can't stick. There's nothing in the law that prevents the sheriff from shifting that back and forth. And that's been an issue. So the thought would be that instead of having this money go to the sheriff of jail and the sheriff of non-jail things, have a part that goes to the jail go directly to the trust. And so that's how, and then as far as a jail administrator, it would be up to the trust to establish a budget for that, to get a jail administrator, from those funds. And they could do that. So that's what I would see. It could also, I suppose, be done separately. We could specifically ask the budget board for X amount to fund a jail administrator if that's what the trust decided to do. And negotiate a salary, and then you could ask the budget board specifically. So there's a couple of things.
So in one of those, just to understand, we would have perhaps an MOU with the sheriff regarding the funds that were separated for the jail or otherwise.
I don't, that's not mine. You can't earmark the funds. So unless it's separated from the source, the jail administrator is not answerable to the sheriff versus the sheriff for all the other things in life. You don't have that. You don't have that binding separation.
I think we've already done that. This year, we did two totally separate budgets, one for the jail, one for law enforcement. Everything's laid out in there. The commission approved that and voted for that. They give you a lump sum of money, but everything you spend is accounted for, and it all goes in front of the commissioners, and they approve it. What he's talking about wanting to do, we did this past year, we totally separated. We submitted two complete budgets, one for the jail, one for law enforcement. First time we've ever done that. We did it this year, and it was approved by everybody.
Well, I'm going to correct it. There are certain things that we don't have a good visibility on in the jail. We've been asking for months for where do all these people work, and still don't have an answer. There are clearly some functions that are, so this is the jail. There's a guy who works at the jail, but he's spending part of his time, patrolling, whatever. We don't have that accountability. I think the trust needs to provide that accountability. The MOU isn't going to cut it. You're going to need to separate out those two functions entirely for the fund.
The savings I see where it would not require a decrease in pay would be not be certifying any new employees other than the required number. Because with the turnover, 75% or whatever it is, when you count in the weeks or months that they're being certified, and then that's lost when they leave the jail or when if you were to hire, I get it right actually, but if you hired them and didn't do the complete certification, just training for a detention officer, I think that's about 3 weeks less. So anyway, you'd save 3 weeks of salary in a year when they weren't out of commission. It's about 3 weeks for the detention officers who aren't certified versus the ones who have been certified in their training.
Are you talking about the law enforcement people?
Well, just
They go
detention
to Cleve
officers
for
that
about
are,
4 months.
all right, then that's good enough. 4 months versus 3 weeks and 75% turnover. You just get that savings every year on 300 and something employees.
Yeah, the question is whether DO officers should be clean certified.
Yeah, and in Tulsa, they only have 2.
I don't have an answer, that's just the issue.
2 per shift, I think.
Well, that was part of at the last jail trust meeting that we did. Part of our presentation was letting the trust know how much law enforcement's involved in the jail operation, setting on inmates at the hospital, transporting inmates to investigations of crime, contraband, and all those things. That's what law enforcement's utilized within the jail. And they presented that at the last jail for us. But there is a number of law enforcement. That was another rumor that going around that everybody that worked in our jail was a certified deputy, totally. The overwhelming majority are detention officers. But there are some deputies assigned within the jail. That's their own job. But they have jobs that it takes law enforcement people to do. Like sitting on, I mean, if a murderer goes to the hospital and is admitted, we put 2 deputies on that person in the hospital. If it's a nonviolent crime, we put 1 deputy on. We transport up to 190 every day from the jail to the courthouse for courts. Those are law enforcement people doing those functions. And again, we will ask what you need. I think probably 3/4 of that information is obtainable that you can get, but we'll try our best. I'll have my employees put that together and try to give it to you, but you could get 3/4 of that information yourself just in county records.
Can tell us what they're.
I think it was even laid out in our budget on the employees and what they do and how many works in each section.
I think at our last meeting, there was the request, which you graciously agreed in your office, to produce the actual roll, like what each staff, how many employees, where they are, was that?
Each shift, how many
Each shift.
people?
How many people, where they are, which floors, how many would be dedicated to that, and then that would be a HR form, and I know that you've approved giving that to the trust, so I think that's more of what
If my
you're
memory serves
requesting.
me correct, I thought we were going to put that information on the portal.
Oh,
Information board.
yeah, we're in the process of designing that, where all of that can go to each node on that.
And then are they pre-certified or not, or do they need to be pre-certified?
I think Jennifer, as we move forward, one of the things that I've heard from this group, and you can help clarify, is that it's very important for the detention officers as well, and for the people that are working inside the detention center to know that this trust is looking out for their interest as well, and that if, at a minimum, making sure that the situation that's there is better for them, and whatever processes are formed within the operations of the jail, and that their security benefits and the different ideas are,
That stays the same.
that stays the same, and as far as the breakdown of how many deputies were cleared or that, some of the information that we'll learn and gather more of it, for the people to know, especially the detention officers, that we're looking out in the best interest to maximize the people who are working there.
Would I be correct in feeling that the consensus, generally, the group is to hire the administrator? Yes? Okay, I don't know if you need to take a vote on that or not, but that was just what I think since.
I would move that we do so. That's a formal motion required. I would move that we interview people to act as an administrator who answers directly to the trust and hires people under them to answer to that administrator.
I'll second that. Point of order, is that something we can do today?
Yes, you can do that today. However, I think a preferred course of action would be to state your desires and then direct staff, which I suppose is essentially me, to prepare formal documentation that comes back to you at your August meeting.
I will amend my motion to reflect the comments of council that we instruct council to prepare a formal document for voting at the next meeting. Be too early for you?
No, it's not too early. It's 2 weeks from today is the next meeting.
That would be a motion to interview persons to put out, I guess, requests for qualifications, I guess it would be. That doesn't have to be a formal one, but just a advertise for people to come and serve as a jail administrator, paid by and answerable to the trust, and then would employ other jail employees, also to the trust.
Implicit in that motion, I want to be clear that jail administrator will be the supervisor of all other jail employees.
Yes.
I understand.
Existing and new.
Sure, right. And perhaps, I don't know if it'd be appropriate to add an addendum to that to reflect what Madam Chairman, Mr. Couch, and Mr. Brown and others pointed out about that having, I guess that'd be a separate thing to give some assurance to the jail employees that their status could be no different than what it is now. Nobody's guaranteed a job now, nobody guaranteed, but as guaranteed as they are now, their job benefits. Would that be better in a separate item?
Probably a separate vote on
Okay.
that. Because I have a feeling that certain people may vote one way on the first motion, and other people may vote differently on the second motion.
Commissioner, would it be, instead of going to hire somebody, shouldn't we develop a process for
Interview.
well, not for a transition?
First of all, the transition
That's
is...
part of it.
Yes, the
Part
transition...
of the interview, hiring somebody is part of that, but it's really much more than that.
Yes, it is, and thank you for bringing that up, because transition is a separate issue. You can hire somebody, but that doesn't mean that you turn the key over right then. We still need to have an MOU. The sheriff has the constitutional duty to run the jail, and will until such time as the trust says otherwise. But I would guess, even if you hire somebody, it's going to be some period of time, a few months, I would think, at least, before that person actually is operating the jail, right? Because
I would think so.
Yeah, I would think so. So I did not intend to mean that we're just going to turn the key over. And thank you for asking the question.
I just think there's going to be a lot of, some agreements that need to come forth, and I just think there's going to be a little more to it than other things we'll have to do.
I agree that it does. So, I mean, but does that mean, are you suggesting maybe something different as far as interviewing people? Because interviewing doesn't mean you have to hire one. So we're going to...
Well, to me, that's all part of the development process of going toward a jail administrator.
Would it be useful to, in the interview process, discussing with people what their view would be on a transition?
Oh, sure.
So is that a question that could be, I don't think we're binding ourselves by asking to be interviewed for that purpose.
No, I guess I think there's more to the process of interviewing. There's kind of, you're going to put, if we go in this direction, how are you going to get the interviews ready? Who's going to be accepting the interviews? Who's going to be, are we going to advertise? And if so, in what places? There's just more than doing the interviews. There's a lot of process involved outside.
And I agree with that. So is there something you'd like to add to the motion? I'm happy to consider a friendly amendment.
And I'm just throwing out the suggestion that we develop a process to cause us to hire a jail administrator.
I'd be happy to amend the motion to do that. So that we would be voting next week, Mr. Williams.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, thank you, on a process by which we would interview people to act as jail administrator, answerable to the trust, and hire people under them, answerable through them to the trust.
Trustee Calvin, may I suggest several separate motions? And the first would be resolve that the detention center be operated by an administrator, period. And then there'll be more motions on everything that's been discussed here. The question would be whether that's your motion, sir.
We can do that with the understanding.
But I'm going to come to that.
You're going to come,
Yeah.
okay.
I think people may have different views on different pieces, and this will work.
Okay.
Because you do need a process for the interview.
Yeah, I'm going to come to that.
And then
Yeah,
funding.
yeah. I'll come to that. I've been listening to what you've been saying. But there's not that motion yet. I've suggested that motion.
Okay, I will then make the motion that we ask council to develop a question for voting on at our next meeting in 2 weeks about whether the detention center should be operated by an administrator.
Correct.
Okay, great.
I kind of find this ironic because you're wanting to hire a jail administrator and haven't even started the audit. We've got trust members that's never even been in the jail or toured the jail. No one's asked for anything. I'm unaware of you running the jail or anyone else with this trust that's running jail. It seems like, hopefully everybody's being upfront, didn't have an agenda before they started. I was hoping the trust would be open-minded, fair, and reasonable. I encourage the audit. One of Sue Ann Arnold's employees, we opened the door to her for 6-8 months. She did a complete audit. And her final statement was, how in the world do you do what you do with what they give you? I encourage the OCU person to get with her, share it. There is nothing there to hide. Every dime is accounted for. And since I've been sheriff, we've done a very good job. People keep criticizing my predecessor going back 24 years. I haven't been sheriff that long. But it seems a little premature to jump in there and hire jail administrator. You haven't even got the audit person though.
That might be a fair question that when the motion is voted on. It could be that the authority wishes to defer that until after the audit's done. That's always possible.
That makes more sense, really, from a practical standpoint. To figure out where you're at and then figure out what to do. Other thoughts?
I don't think any of us are questioning the sheriff's use of the funds. I don't think we're questioning.
I agree. I have no concerns that there's any improprieties in the use of the funds.
That's better said.
I don't have an issue at some point hiring or discussing the possibility of hiring a jail administrator. I just think at this stage it's a little premature.
Is that consensus with the trust?
I would still like to vote on
So all we're voting on now is whether to ask council to draft a
Yes.
question.
Whether
It could still be
to-
that people vote,
it. We have 2 weeks.
right, that you know, a motion, maybe I'll make a motion myself if the audit, depending on how long that takes, that we defer action on that question if that is the case. At that time, all we're asking now is for council to draft a question.
Is it inappropriate to ask council what the other motions you were going to lay out? Do you have those put
I would
together?
like to know the same.
The next question, or the next item that you might instruct me to do, would, assuming the first one passes, would be to develop a process for selection of a jail administrator. And the third would be to develop a process for transition to a jail administrator with prospective jail administrators during their interviews to be asked for their observations and suggestions with respect to transitions. And final would be, a final motion would be a motion to express the will of the trust to recognize that the existing detention officers are greatly valued and will be needed to operate the detention center, and therefore their retirement benefits and health benefits shall be preserved.
And retirement.
And retirement, yes, retirement.
So I would like to just mention, in kind of due process to some of what I hear, as much as I would like to go forward and understand that by having council present the wording for each of those, that we have a few more things kind of up the river, which we pointed out before, you know, I need to tour it as a trustee. But we have a motion from we have approved the chair receiving asking for $100,000. And part of that is for the financial review. and to be able to know that in some ways, being able to identify the best way of securing that funding through the budget board, it seems to be more of a priority so that we can pay our council and start that process to understand what we're doing. I think that probably needs to be worked out as well. So that we can have the review, start the review, work with the undersheriff, and I'm not sure that we're ready to take a few steps.
Madam Chairman, I'm sure the rest of the trustees remember this, but I need a little help remembering exactly what the time constraints of the trust indentures are for us to have some action.
Yes, the trust indenture requires that by October 1st of 2019, that the trust will have prepared and released an RFP for operation of the detention center unless the trustees choose to operate the jail by means of a jail administrator.
So we don't want to be hasty and go forward until we have the financials and understand what's going on, but we do have a time constraint that is outlined specifically in the trust indenture.
That is correct.
And that unless was, the wording on unless was what again?
Unless the trustees choose to operate the jail with a trust administrator or with the sheriff.
And Rebecca, perhaps you know this. We set a date for September meeting.
Your meetings are set through very early September,
And it's every other week, isn't it?
but not beyond. Rebecca knows the answer.
I'm not sure I'm ready for September, just August the 19th.
We don't have any meetings beyond that?
We do.
Yeah, 9th of September.
Do we have another meeting in September?
9th of September?
Not that I have reported, but it doesn't.
It did not go all the way through September, and I
No,
believe,
so that's,
so the 9th, of course, you can set meetings as often as you wish, or as infrequently as you wish.
That's good.
so we have two meetings, so recognizing that, and I can understand going forward with the wording.
Just to refresh everyone's memory, Article 8, paragraph 36 on page 15 is where the time, or the time constraints are all the way down.
Madam Chairman, your point is very good that, perhaps having a audit go through before this is voted on. The motion, at the suggestion of our council, was simply to come up with, the council come up with the wording on it. That does not necessarily mean moving over having a final vote on it next week.
So we've got a timetable. It is in process.
Hold on one moment. Trustee Epler.
Thank you. So I heard you just mention there are a few things that are further down the road, shared, but I wanted to ask for legal advice concerning, should we choose an administrator and also choose to honor the current employees? Are they going to be able to remain county employees, or would they be employees of the trust? Could we have clarification on that before we end up getting that far down the road?
Yes, they will.
But I do want to clarify, I too value the current employees, and many of them are close coworkers and friends, and I think we just should know exactly what they'll be looking at based on all of our decisions.
That could be a decision in the future. I know it can be a situation where they are county employees that are in a trust situation. I know, for example, the airport trust has employees that are city employees. The water trust has employees who are city employees. So this trust could have employees that are county employees. They could also have, if they choose to do so, set up their own process and have trust employees, but that would be a lot of process involved in doing so, dealing with insurance and retirement and those things. And then there's the transportability of from one to the other. So we would have to be very careful as we went forward on that.
Right, I'm just requesting the information so we know what we're looking at.
Those very questions the sheriff's office asked 3.5 years ago, and they've yet to be answered. That's why my employees are walking out the door and quitting daily, because they don't know what's going to happen.
Well, today I hope that they are rested a little bit more, that we are looking out for them as well, and have no intentions of affecting that environment.
Madam Chairman, Trustee Calhoun's had his hand up.
Well,
Curtis, Chief Perry.
please, Chief.
Well, I was just going to ask a question of if we make the decision to hire a jail administrator, at some point there will be an opportunity, I'm hoping, that we will make a decision on what that relationship between us, the administrator, the jail, the sheriff's office, how all that's going to look, right? Because right now, I'm not sure that I understand that we've done that, and I don't want anybody to assume that we have. And if we need to do that, then let's do it. I'm thinking that maybe that decision will come later. I mean, if we hire an administrator, does that mean we are running the jail, absent the sheriff? Or does that mean the administrator will work with the sheriff to run the jail through us? How does that look, is what I'm asking.
That's another point for the next meeting. I would think we'll walk through that. Sensitive.
Well, how it works with the city and under state law with the county, if somebody is employed by a county trust, they're by state law mandated to get the same retirement they got when they were county employees. So, and then it takes, there's precedent at the county for other county trusts we have, where we do employ people, they're treated for all benefits and purposes like that, just like county employees. So, and I think that latter part for the health benefits, I think requires Board of County Commissioners action. I'm happy to do that, and I can't imagine my fellow commissioners not supporting it. So I think it's actually even easier at the county level for trust employees than at this level.
But I assume they wouldn't have to be county employees. I assume that's a decision.
Right, well, I'm saying, even if they're trust employees,
They have that same.
And Chief Perry, those are things that we would all work through.
Okay, I'm just going to make sure that's still out there.
A lot of steps between now and the end result, aren't there? Are there any other issues that the trust wants to bring up? Anything else? We walked through our roadmap.
At this point, I don't have any formal instructions to draft. I am going to answer the question about the employees, but I don't have any instructions.
we'll hear a motion, and
Yes.
then I thought there was a second, I guess we amended so many times, I guess we need to.
And then you made another motion simplifying. It simply said, instruct or ask legal counsel to draft a simple motion to operate by way of hired administrator. And then all that other stuff is done. I'll second your motion.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, for clarification, I think the counselor recommended that there be about four motions
That's right.
drafted, so that we'd be asking him to draft four motions instead. We don't have to vote now. We don't have to.
And I'd suggest that we vote it on separately.
Yeah.
And the first motion is to direct me to prepare materials that you'll vote on that would, by which you would choose the method for jail operations of being out of a jail administrator. That would be the first motion. I think that's the motion that's on the table.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, that is correct.
You guys appropriate to be drafting all four?
I don't have, well, I'm just trying to clarify, we need to do it one way or the other, yes. The motion on the table, as I understand it right now, is for the first motion to be brought back next week.
To be drafted.
To be drafted.
Correct.
For that?
That's a good
Because it's
question.
not even really voting.
I guess you could
Well,
say.
but we don't have consensus, and he's looking for some direction.
Yeah, I don't
We're
know.
not going to take action
I
on
don't
next
know.
week. Why do you need to comment on it?
It's just us to put it on the agenda.
I think the reason to ask council to draft it next week is because we do have to put out an RFP for a private contractor in October, unless we decide to do something different. So in anticipation of that, not that we'll necessarily vote on it at the next meeting, but to just get the wheels in motion so that it does get, we have the legal format for the question. That's my understanding.
Is that the group's understanding? That makes sense. Okay, any other issues? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I don't have to vote on it.
Would you like to do roll call?
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Francie Agwarko, aye.
Still or not?
No.
Aye.
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 As we said in the legislature, no for now. Right?
Aye.
He could say that.
Now.
Aye for now.
That's fine. Madam Chair, I'll take the next one. I think all these are yay for now.
I would think.
When you're really going to vote on it, it's in 2 weeks. Okay. Then the second motion, should someone wish to make it, is well, it will be an item with respect to establishing process of selection of jail administrator. That would be the motion. Should anyone wish to make that motion?
Well, if we're this far, I'll go ahead and make that motion.
I'll second it.
Comments, questions? Rebecca?
Roll call, please.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
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 Then the third motion would be a motion to state the value of the current detention officers and to ensure that the benefits, including retirement and health benefits, are preserved.
All those in favor, can we do that now? Who's going to be against that? Not to do the chairman's job.
As long as it's where
I like it.
benefits will be maintained, retirement, health care, everything.
And the motion, and what I will write will say all current benefits, including but not limited to health and retirement. And anything else you want.
Do we have a motion and a second?
Anyone, yes.
I'll make that motion. As phrased.
Second. Any other comments or questions?
Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
What's that?
That's all there is.
Do we do the one with the employees?
The one on the,
The employees would be, to take care of the employees?
yes, that was what I just, yeah. It's been reported that the chair did not vote on the last item.
Aye.
Madam Chairperson, Rebecca has a report as to when our future meetings are.
Okay.
This is the official report provided by Jane, incidentally.
Yes. September 2nd, which is Labor Day, so
We've already.
okay, so that would be the 9th.
So the next is September 9th.
October 17th, November 4th, and December 2nd.
Madam Chair, can I request those be emailed to us?
Yes. You do that.
Thank you.
I can't believe I'm suggesting this, but well, I know we've been doing meetings every week, and I think we need to probably get beyond that, but I'm not sure for the next couple of months that maybe twice a month may be more appropriate, at least until we get to the October 31st deadline for the trust indenture.
It's October 1st.
What's that?
It's October 1st.
I'm sorry, is that October 1st? Yes, so I guess that's just one extra meeting in there, but frankly, we do it every other week, but, you know, the 23rd of September. I'm just suggesting, it just seems that there's 2 meetings before that, and that doesn't seem like a lot to me.
So you asking for me to do that?
I'm suggesting we do another meeting, yes, on September 23rd,
So what was the first September date?
9th.
September 23rd?
I'm suggesting we put, there'd be an extra one in there 2 weeks after the 9th.
2 weeks after the night?
So, Willis,
I just,
23rd.
I think we'll need that.
23rd of which one?
September 23rd.
So would it be appropriate to make a motion that we have a special meeting, they're all special meetings, a special meeting on September 23rd?
What about October 17th?
Madam Chair, it was recited October 17th. I have down October 7th. I just want to make sure it's the 17th, not the 7th.
My understanding was the 7th.
7th?
7th?
Yeah, 7th.
October 2nd. This is probably
Okay, so we're all going the first Mondays, with the exception of September, we're going to the second Monday because of the fact that that is Labor Day. And I'm suggesting that we have one on in between the 9th of September and October 7th on September 23rd. And I made a motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. September 23rd is added. You want to bring this up?
We've had some public discussion in the last couple of meetings. And we just kind of put together, when we formed this trust, we adopted and just said, well, public discussion is a good thing, and it is a good thing. And we should let anybody come up and speak under any items they desire for 5 minutes. And I guess I've been involved in other public meetings where it's been a little less than that. For example, the City Council of Oklahoma City has 2 minutes, Cindy? 3. Probably didn't know that. 3 minutes. And, you know, and public comment isn't required. I mean, you can have them that they can comment on the items that are on the agenda and not just general items. And so we kind of put that together, and it was a good discussion, but as we go forward, and no action today, I just think we ought to think about how we want to do it as far as, do we want to time to items, you know, anybody can submit anything to the trustees, and it can be given out in written form, and they can be submitted to the county clerk, and I'm sure he would provide that information that comes in. And so there are ways of communicating, and public comment is one of those too, but we didn't really have any discussion when we started up this trust as to how we would handle that. And a lot of different trusts do it a lot of different ways, and maybe we should just have a discussion about how we want to do it in the future.
I agree.
Madam Chair, Mr. City Manager, I found it a little laborious last time to have a speaker get up on every agenda item. It was, I I thought, I need to be paid a little more for this time and a half.
Public comment's important. We are here to serve the public, and I think we all understand that. It's just a matter of, there are levels of how we can handle the public engagement and go forward.
And we have approved the appointment of some group of folks to come and give us public input. I mean, pretty soon we're going to be drowning. I mean, of course, we're here and we'll listen, but, and I think that's what you're getting at. Maybe it could be condensed somehow.
And I don't want to take anything away from the people that spoke over the last 2 weeks. That is, although it may not be totally on point about what this trust does, it's a very, very important issue in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma County, Oklahoma, and the United States right now. I don't want to by any way diminish the importance of that debate that's going on right now. Some of that was not necessarily on point to what we have authority over.
Do you have a number of minutes that you think would be the sweet spot there to continue to get the most people in during the public comment? 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
2 minutes would be,
If I can, by frame of reference, a couple of those in the room can back me up on this, but in the legislature and legislative committee, first of all, it's the discretion of the chairman as to whether to allow any public comment. And I think the usual practice is, and I'm not saying this is the way we should do it, I'm just saying as a frame of reference, is that if the presenter of a bill in committee has somebody speak on their behalf, usually the chairman will allow somebody to speak on the other side of it. But other than that, there's usually not public comment at all. And then to the extent that there is, they do usually ration it out as like only a certain number of people per side, or like, this particular question we're going to have, 6 minutes total this side, 6 minutes, you guys figure out amongst yourselves. There's different ways to do that, and the twin goals are allowing public comment, which is a good thing. I feel the same with you, Jim. I think that some of that discussion is helpful, whether I agree with it or not. But the flip side of that is you have a public body that has to conduct business, and you can't get ground to the hall on things, particularly things that are not within our, those current jurisdictions. So just for what it's worth, your fellow trustees, that's one frame of reference of how, a much larger public body.
I think we have to, I'm sorry. I think we have to keep in mind that this is a community public problem, and we have to let people in our community and our public speak their truth and their voice, especially on the things that are on the agenda. I understand if they're getting outside the scope of the things that we've been talking about, or things that we even have authority to make decisions over, but eventually we will get to a place where we have more authority than we do now. And I think it's going to be important to let those public voices be heard. I'm all for, appropriate limitations. I think that if the city council operates on 3 minutes and we want to adopt that as well, that's fine, but I don't think we should get to a place where we are essentially usurping the public out of our meetings.
I agree.
It's a tough call. It is.
So I hear several things. One, possibly 3 minutes, and people can certainly, that's sufficient time to get to the point, which is nice. That we have people, if possible, are speaking on both sides, and that it's something that's current to the agenda that we have before us. To an extent, recognizing, because there are avenues I've also heard in Mr. Hood's office to be able to receive items that people would like for us to be aware of, and items of interest, and that, and I've also heard that the public comment come at the end of the meeting, that we're able to conduct the business before us.
not after each agenda item.
No, at the end.
Yes, and similar to the legislative committees and the agencies and departments in the state, where they run public comment, must notify the chair at the beginning of the meeting. So as you were receiving slips in real time, on a point of reference, I said we do it this way. At the beginning of the meeting, that way as the chair, you're not caught by surprise. You know, if there are in fact 40 people that want to speak for or against, well now you know if it's better to have 3 minutes. Now that we should give you more discretion, you're the chairman, we elected you for a reason. You have a better idea. If there are 2 people, okay, give us 3 minutes. If there are 40 people, it's going to be hard to conduct our business and allow everybody to speak. So you have to give too much time for the public to speak, an individual, well, then somebody else wanting to speak doesn't have that opportunity. So it's good for the public. But my point is, I think part of our process should be that the chair, or in her absence, the vice chair, be notified at the onset, at the commencement of every meeting, how much public wants to speak. And then after the meeting begins, no additions. And that way, as we head toward the end, you know exactly how many folks can speak for or against. And that's very fair to the public. They all have time. When you limit that, a lot of time to speak.
That sound like a good plan going forward?
I would agree that that's fair. Seems to be a similar setup to the city council. You have to submit your name and what you plan to comment on prior to that agenda item so that the mayor is aware. So I think that's a fair assertion.
We'll just because not just the agenda item before the actual meeting starts, and carry the meeting. So if agenda item 6, you don't see the slip on agenda item 4, beginning of the meeting.
That would give the items are smooth.
No, not after. I'm saying if somebody wants to speak on I don't care.
Yeah, no.
I'm not Robert, these aren't my rules. So on agenda item 6, nobody gives you a slip on agenda item 4.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Allow the chair and the vice chair to run these meetings. And so at the very beginning, you have a stack. How many folks are going to speak? It's all right here. So now she can operate and manage this meeting, which we'd like her to do, and there's nobody adding to the process. And it sounds like this confinement or stringency. There are folks I've seen leave in the last 2 meetings. You know, they didn't get a chance to speak. They left because we ran out of time. We ran out of time for the public to speak. And you don't get to run a meeting.
So moving forward, that sounds like a good method.
So the method, as I understand it, if I may,
Please come.
Madam Chair, that public comment be limited to 3 minutes? Is that what I'm hearing? 3,
Yes.
2, 3, 3. May 3. That if you wish to provide public comment, you must fill out the slip and deliver it to the chair before the meeting begins. The chair has latitude as to the number of people that speak and even how long they speak, and it's influenced by how many people are in attendance to speak. I guess the thought is some more people get to speak if they speak shortly, sadly. So far, so good?
Can that be determined prior to the agenda item being commented on? So can they know in enough advance how much time they're going to have based on the volume of people that want to comment on that topic? I mean, I just think you get into a place where they don't even have time to prepare what they want to hurry up and spit out in 2 minutes. But how are they going to know if 40 people want to comment on the same thing that they do? So we need some predictability.
Perhaps we can allocate time at the beginning of the meeting. You know, if there's 35 folks who want to speak on item 7, then you could allocate 30 minutes to speak on this. The chair could announce some amount, and if the members of the board see it differently, you could, say, well, I propose something else. Is that kind of what you're thinking of? Where she announces that?
Yes, just in fairness to everyone who wants to speak.
Okay. Some of this will crawl before we walk, and we'll get better as we do it. Now, Is it desired that the public comment currently can occur at 2 times? One is when an agenda item is called, and the other is under that general topic, public comment at the end. What are your desires with respect to that?
I would defer to the chair because she's running our meeting and I think I would be fine either way.
Well, if someone's showing up to speak on an item and they think they're gonna influence the trustees by some of their comments, they really need to be heard before you might vote on that item.
Is it possible to have a time at the front before that's done, instead of like last time, 5 or 6 times on every agenda item? Again, I found that laborious. If it can be done even before the meeting, if it's on an agenda item, allow the public time to do that, and then we can cast our votes accordingly. It's a question.
So mine as chair, just as a reminder that all of that will come is incredibly important. We also have a large task in front of us to be able that time to conduct our business, and recognizing that we are not, with the exception of our elected officials. I'm also conscious of the time that you all are committed to this process as well, and that I'd like to be respectful not only for the public's time, but for our elected officials and for each of the trustees, that we conduct our business in a very expedited, efficient, and professional manner, and be able to accomplish both of those things. I also recognize the sheriff has brought in the undersheriff and the district captains, and make sure that we have, in due course of business, recognize that the mechanisms that we best choose and work with the public to choose to identify how we move forward in an efficient manner and be respectful for all of the time and for the service. And as a reminder, it's an honor and a privilege to serve the county and to know what the county wants and what the county is looking for and what issues are important to the county. It's an honor to serve with each of you in this capacity. And so I just want to take you all go forward and know that those things are important, but your time matters to me as well. The sheriff's, captains, and then the sheriff, those times matter, are important as well. So whichever mechanisms, I appreciate the county clerk, Mr. Hayden's office being a recipient of, offered to be recipient of different information. If the public has different materials they want disseminated to the trust, it's my understanding, am I misspeaking on that the county clerk has agreed to be a recipient of that and to get materials out to us that the public would like for us to be aware of and to know about. So I thank you in your office for that. I don't know if that answered anything, but I just kind of want to bring back that your time matters.
On that point, Madam Chairman, we might state in our rules that will manifest themselves on the agenda so everyone can see it, that the trust invites written comments that can be submitted to the county clerk. The county clerk will then get them to each of the trustees. So that's another method of communication. That's agreeable. Sure.
With regard to when they have public comment, I agree that having it on each agenda item is probably not advisable. It would be possible for somebody to just, I know this because I tried to do this when I was in the State House one time, to argue every bill and all, because I was trying to release all of that. So, Senator Brown is laughing. So it is possible for somebody to try to delay things. So I think either having it at the beginning or at the end, that way it obviates that possibility. Where you could try to do things just to talk about every item even once they just to delay things. So I would encourage that we do it either at the beginning or at the end. Mr. Couch's points about not doing it after the items is well taken. Just a suggestion.
If I prepare this to provide the public comment all at the beginning, will there be objection to that? Okay, so you guys need to talk about this.
You say only at the beginning?
Only at the beginning.
Would that sort of derail what you need to be accomplishing during your meetings? And if you have it at the end, then there's more of an accordion of how much time you can devote to it?
An argument against that, having them all at the beginning and at the end, is that, for example, if information is provided on the item, that might influence somebody's comments as they go forward. And that's, we've had, I mean, I've experienced exactly what you said, that somebody signs up, but in 30 years of public service, I've only experienced one or two of those people.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know,
I would
avoid
rather give-
people, but they're generally short.
I would rather give the public the ability to stand there and speak to us on an individual item before we vote on it. That way we've heard them, we've taken their concerns, and I mean, if we've got 15 items on the agenda, they come in and talk to us beforehand, I'm not going to remember all of that by the time we get to the item.
So if I write it that way, would there be disagreement?
I agree with you.
How are you going to write it?
Very delicately.
Well, that your public comments may be provided under an agenda item to which their comments are relevant.
Now, is that what you do at the city? On your each agenda item, you allow public comments?
Yes.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was at the end of the
Well,
month.
you can speak on the item, or you can speak on whatever you want at the end.
Wow, you got to think on that feet.
But it isn't, you know, every once in a while, there will be an item that we had, just like we had the immigration issue here. I mean, we have had, you know, the Black Mass at the Civic Center. We had people show up for a couple of weeks, but that went away. And so issues do come up from time to time, but it most of the time works out pretty well.
Yeah, and as a quasi-governmental entity, I think we owe it to the public to listen to what they have to say. Now, when they get repetitive, then I think we start taking some actions and limit. But outside of that, if the public wants to take time out of their schedule to come talk with us and advise us how they feel on issues, we should be able to sit there and listen to them.
So, I'm going to write this that you make the comments under each agenda item. I also heard something about repetition. Perhaps if there's too much repetition, the chair will have some authority to limit repetition. Is that desirable?
I fully trust Chairwoman, but how does she discern or tell someone they're repeating too much? What if they're going to get to something that's different?
For example, the mayor does a fairly good job of saying, if you have something that hasn't already been said, that you would like to come forward, or that to raise your hand, that everybody who agrees with comment X, and that we see the raises of hands. So it's more of a recognition, and then anything additional that hasn't already been. And I also like the part of everyone here that agrees with that can raise their hands, and that's a pretty powerful message to each of us as well. So it's not as much not giving someone an opportunity to speak.
Okay, so I'll write it that way, and you don't have to vote on this here. I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'll write it that way. Now, the final thing is that we have public comment on every item on the agenda. It's a listed item. Do you still wish to have a general public comment section at the end? Now, realizing if at that point you've already voted on things, so
Could I ask, city manager, is there a time limit on those general comments?
Oh, absolutely.
How long is it?
Is it 3 and
it's 3.
If the meeting's gone on past 2 hours, can you have a limit based on how long the meeting's gone on? Or no? Is
Yeah,
that
really
just
can't.
not-
If you're gonna have public comment, you're gonna have public comment. And,
And again, to work with the public to say, like, not to minimize the voice, but to recognize the time that's committed to everyone that comes to speak and to those that are serving and those that work for the county. Just, you know, again, kind of having that understanding jointly that if it's the same message, it doesn't need 2 minutes that's to respect all people's time. And that can be, and little bit of a difference too.
So we'll.
I'm not, I mean, it's, I represent you all, so how the group decides that.
So we'll have public comment at the end, general public comment. That's how I'll write it, unless I hear something to the contrary. We will have public comment at the end, in addition to the individual comments. And now the next question is, does the public comment at the end have to be something that the trust has jurisdiction over? I mean, for example, if someone stands up and wants to speak about Oklahoma should withdraw from the union, is that something that we want to take your time to hear? Something the trust has or will have jurisdiction over?
It should be arguably relevant to the business of the trust.
Everybody happy with arguably relevant? That's a good phrase. To the business, to the, that's good. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll draft this, and unless you tell me not to, it'll be at the bottom of the agenda at 6. These rules will be set forth at your next meeting. Are you happy with that? Incidentally, when you get in a meeting and you don't like it, that, you know, the chair or a majority of the trustees can overrule things like that. So that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, thank you. And again, for information, you know that's come. I thank the county clerk's office for being recipients. Jennifer?
I just appreciate all of you. You all have done great, and it's been eye-opening. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate all of your input. You're doing a really good thing. It's hard.
Can I make one more comment? I really appreciate the tone and the collegiality of this group. We're doing some hard things here, and I'm glad to be a part of a group that deals with these issues the way we've dealt with them today.
Amen.
Any other comments? As a reminder, we meet on September 19th.
Yeah, it's August.
I was always getting there.
It's almost like the teacher's saying we don't have school the rest of the week.
No.
Someone will send out a scheduled list of the next meetings.
And Rebecca's going, of all the meetings that
We
are
do not
set.
meet next Monday. Then that, we are,
Did you have a motion to adjourn?
no, I'm calling for the motion to adjourn now unless there's any other motion.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?